If your dog has ever brought you something while you were crying, do you actually know what it was trying to tell you? Most people see it as one of those heartwarming little moments that reminds them why they love their dog so much. You're sitting there with tears on your face, feeling like the world has gotten a little too heavy, and your dog quietly walks in, picks something up off the floor, and sets it right in front of you. You smile through the tears, you think, "That's my dog," and then life moves on. But what you just watched your dog do is one of the most emotionally complex things it will ever do for you. And the science behind it, real science from real universities with real measured data, reveals something about your dog that most owners spend an entire lifetime with their pet and never once find out. What's happening inside your dog at that specific moment, inside its brain, inside its body, running through the biology of the bond the two of you have built together, goes so much further than what it looks like on the surface. And if you've been reading it as just a cute habit, you have been missing the full picture of what your dog is actually doing for you. Here's what this video covers. We're going through exactly what fires up inside your dog the second it hears you cry, why it specifically reaches for an object before it even gets to you, and what that object choice might actually say about the way your dog understands you. We're also going to talk about something most dog owners get completely wrong, which is what it really means when your dog doesn't come to you at all when you cry, because that truth is nothing like what most people assume, and it hits differently once you know it. But there's one thing I'm holding until the very end of this video. Researchers who study the bond between dogs and their owners have recently found something that surprised even them. It's not what anyone expected. And when you hear it, the way you see your dog, not just when you're crying, but in every ordinary moment you share together, will shift in a way that doesn't go back. To get there, though, we need to start with the moment your dog first hears you, because something happens inside your dog right then, something measurable and real that most owners never even think to consider. The moment your dog hears your voice break, something activates inside it that has nothing to do with training and nothing to do with routine. Researchers at the University of Bury published a study in Scientific Reports in 2017 where they measured how dogs' brains responded to human voices carrying different emotional tones. And what they found changes the way you understand what your dog actually feels and hears when you cry. Lead researcher Siniscalchi and the team discovered that your dog's brain does not process crying the way it processes any other sound you make. It reads the emotional weight inside your voice and registers your crying as distinctly different from laughter, from regular conversation, or from any other sound you produce on an ordinary day. Your dog is not just detecting that you are making noise, it is recognizing that you are in pain and treating that recognition as something that requires a response. But here is the part that most people completely miss, and it is the part that makes this so much bigger than a brain response. A study by Custodio and Diaz, published in Animal Behavior in 2014, went further and measured what happens physically inside dogs when they hear a human crying. The results are the kind that take a moment to absorb. Your dog's cortisol levels, cortisol being the primary hormone your body releases when you are under stress, measurably rise when your dog hears you cry. Your dog's body is going through a stress response alongside yours. You are in a different room with tears on your face, and your dog's internal chemistry is already shifting in response before it has even laid eyes on you. The two of you are not having separate experiences at that moment. At a biological level, you are sharing one. Now, you might be reading all of this as just pure biology, an automatic reflex with nothing deeper behind it. But that is exactly where most people stop thinking, and stopping there means they miss what is actually happening next. Because once that response fires inside your dog, it faces a real internal decision. A silent crossroads that determines everything about whether it walks toward you, stays frozen, or does something that most owners never expect. And what drives that decision is the part that no one talks about. That decision does not come from training And it does not come from how long your dog has been with you. It comes from something happening inside your dog in real time, right when it hears you, right in that charged moment. And it runs much deeper than most owners ever think to consider. When your dog's body chemistry shifts in response to your crying, it finds itself standing at a crossroads that every dog navigates differently. And how your dog handles that crossroads reveals something about it that most people spend a lifetime completely missing. Here is what the research shows. A study published in Frontiers in Psychology in 2020, led by Carballo and colleagues, looked at how dogs respond when someone near them shows clear signs of emotional distress. What they found turns most people's assumptions completely on their head. The dogs that were internally calmer, the ones whose own stress stayed more regulated in that moment, were actually more likely to cross the room and make contact with the distressed person. The dogs feeling the most overwhelmed internally stayed frozen, locked in place, unable to act. Take a second and let that land. The dog that rushes to your side when you cry may not be the most emotionally connected one in the room. It may simply be the one that is calm enough to convert its concern into movement, and the dog sitting completely still across the room just watching you from over there. It could be the one feeling your pain so intensely that its own system shuts down under the weight of it. That truth alone changes how you read your dog. A second study, published in the journal Animals that same year by Brubaker and colleagues, found that dogs motivated by their owner's distress moved toward them just as reliably and consistently as they moved toward food. That tells you exactly where your pain sits on your dog's list of priorities. So your dog hears you, its body responds, it hits that crossroads, and the ones calm enough to act start moving in your direction. And that is when something you have probably seen happen before but never really had a clear explanation for actually takes place. Because the dogs that do come to you do not always walk straight over. Many of them stop first, pick something up, and bring it to you before they do anything else. Why does your dog do that? What is it really trying to say? That is exactly what comes next. The answer is not what most people assume. Most people's first instinct is to think their dog grabbed whatever was closest, something to occupy its mouth, while its nervous system worked out what to do next. But behavioral researchers who study how dogs communicate in emotionally loaded situations tell a completely different story. A study published in the journal Animals in 2024, led by Kruger and colleagues across an international research network, observed how dogs directed their behavior when someone nearby showed clear emotional distress. What they found was that dogs used objects deliberately as social tools, not as nervous distractions. The object your dog brings you is functioning as a form of communication, its way of addressing the emotional tension it can feel sitting between the two of you. Behavioral researchers describe this as something close to an appeasement gesture, where your dog is trying to shift the atmosphere in the room by introducing something that carries zero threat and zero aggression. It is your dog trying to close the emotional distance without knowing any other way to do it. But here is where it gets genuinely interesting. Research published in Learning and Behavior in 2015 by Summies and colleagues found that dogs do not simply grab the nearest object when human emotion is involved. They show a real tendency toward objects tied to positive shared moments with their owner. Which means the toy your dog drops in your lap while you are sitting there in tears may not be random at all. It may be the exact one connected to your happiest moments together, the one tied to laughter and play, and the version of you that your dog knows best. Your dog could be reaching into your shared history and handing you back a piece of your own joy, quietly hoping you find your way there. If that just changed the way you see that moment, share this video with someone whose dog does the same thing and has never understood why. There are owners who have watched this happen their whole life and never knew what their dog was actually trying to say. Now, there is a part of this that speaks directly to a completely different group of owners watching right now. The ones whose dog never picks anything up when they are upset. The ones whose dog does not come over at all when they cry. And what that silence actually means is the truth in this whole video that is going to hit the hardest of everything you have heard so far. Most dog owners who have sat there crying while their dog watched from across the room have felt the same quiet sting. You needed your dog at that moment, and it stayed right where it was. And without any explanation for why, your mind fills in its own version of the story, usually one that sounds a lot like your dog, simply does not feel things the way you believed it did. That story is not accurate, and if you have been carrying it, you can let it go right now. The science behind what was actually happening in that moment will change how you read your dog permanently. The research from Carballo and colleagues, published in Frontiers in Psychology in 2020, found something about the still dogs that almost never gets mentioned. The dogs that stayed completely frozen, the ones that held eye contact with you from across the room and never moved, were registering some of the highest stress levels observed across the entire study. Their bodies had absorbed your pain so completely that movement became impossible. They were not cold, they were overwhelmed, and if you have ever noticed something in your dog's expression in those moments that looked almost helpless, like it wanted to reach you, but something internal was holding it back, you were not imagining it. You were reading it correctly. Brubaker and colleagues, writing in the journal Animals in 2020, found that dogs pushed through physical barriers to reach a distressed owner just as reliably as they moved toward food, but only when their own internal stress level stayed manageable enough to allow it. The ones that could not get there were not the ones who cared less. They were simply carrying more than they could act through. Now here is where this gets even more personal. Research from Curtis and colleagues, published in Frontiers in Veterinary Science in 2024, found that the intensity of your dog's response to your distress has very little to do with how many years the two of you have been together. What it actually reflects is the quality of the attachment between you. A rescue dog that formed a genuine, secure bond in its first few months with you can be more emotionally in tune with your crying than a dog that has lived beside you for 10 years without that same depth ever forming. Time alone is not the measure. The bond between you is, and that leads directly to the one thing in this video that researchers themselves did not see coming. Something discovered about dogs and the people they love that nobody in the scientific community was fully prepared for. You are about to hear it. The science behind what your dog feels when you cry has taken researchers years to fully piece together. But in 2022, a team at Azabu University in Japan made a discovery that nobody in that field had predicted, and it changed the entire conversation about what your dog genuinely feels for you. Professor Kikusui and colleagues measured something that most people would assume was uniquely human. They tracked how much tear volume dogs' eyes produced when reuniting with their own owners, compared to meeting a familiar person who was not their owner. The results were clear and completely measurable. Dogs produced significantly more tears when they reunited with their owner, their eyes welling up in a way that simply does not happen with anyone else. Your dog, the one that walks in when you cry and reaches for something to bring you, produces something that looks remarkably like tears of joy the moment it sees your face. Sit with that for a moment. And now layer that on top of what Nagasawa and colleagues found in 2015, published through the National Institutes of Health. When dogs and their owners make eye contact, both species release oxytocin. Oxytocin is the bonding hormone your body produces between a mother and her newborn. It is what flows between people in their deepest, most irreplaceable connections. Your dog releases that hormone specifically when it looks at you, and not when it looks at a familiar stranger or another dog it has known for years, but only when it locks eyes with you. Now go back to where this video started. You are sitting there with tears on your face, and your dog walks in, stops, picks something up, and brings it over. You always thought that was just your dog being sweet. But what you know now is that its brain had already locked onto the emotional weight in your voice before it even reached you. Its body chemistry had already shifted alongside yours. The object it carried may have been its quiet way of reaching into your shared history and handing you back a piece of your own happiest moments together. And the eyes looking up at you as it sets that down at your feet, those eyes well up at the sight of you in a way they never do for another living being anywhere on this planet. Your dog is not just reacting to you. It is attached to you the way science once thought only a parent could be attached to a child. That is not a habit. That is love with biology behind it. And if that just changed the way you see your dog, there is something else you need to know. Because while your dog is giving you everything it has in your hardest moments, something is quietly happening inside its body on your most ordinary stressed days that most owners have no idea about. And once you understand it, you will never think about your own stress the same way again. Tap the video on your screen and see what it's really doing to them.